Reddit question translation. What makes men unattractive to women? Reddit question. Trying to sound overly feminist. I don't mean being respectful to women or practicing equality. All of that is fine and appreciated. But I've seen some guys post on social media who act like they deserve a pat on the back and a kiss for thinking women are people, and girls should date them because they know how to wash dishes and treat them as equals, unlike all those other guys. Thanks for promising the bare minimum, I guess. Being constantly negative. I dated someone many years ago who always responded negatively to everything. For example, when I asked if he had any hobbies, he replied, "No, because hobbies are stupid and useless. They take time away from making money, which is the only point of life until we die." Or when I told him he had beautiful eyes, he said, "I don't know why you think that. They're dark." 97% of the world has this ridiculous eye color. I don't see the point in being so negative, and it makes me feel like you don't care about anything, that you're going to have a negative attitude about everything I say or do, and that you have better things to do than talk to me. I remember a date I had with a guy almost 25 years ago. I remember it because we went to eat at a local pizzeria. In the time it took me to eat half a slice, he had eaten the rest, chewing loudly with his mouth open and burping. Pieces of food fell on his shirt. You could hear snorting sounds as he shoved food in his mouth. I don't remember anything else about that night except his disgusting way of eating. It was a complete disaster. Not keeping their word or making commitments and not sticking to them. Especially when they don't follow up about why they abandoned the commitment. The inability to have difficult conversations. Every time I express my needs or want to talk about small things that could build up resentment over time, he sits, listens, understands, and says, "I don't know what to say. I'm sorry." Once in a while he tells me, "I'll try to do better." That takes away my desire to talk about anything because there's never a clear resolution or effort on his part to work together on something. When men try to buy my attention, I hate when men brag about their money or try to take me to an expensive restaurant and tell me how expensive it is. I want to get to know you, not your fortune. If you're an idiot, all your money won't make up for it. Acting like I'm a commodity that can be bought doesn't work in your favor. I want you to have drive and passion for what you do, sure, but you could have drive and passion working for a nonprofit that doesn't pay very well. And I'd respect that. I can make my own money. Acting like I have a secret price where nothing else matters is frankly just insulting. A guy flirted with me too much online but didn't do it in person. A few weeks ago I met a guy on Snapchat. We talked all night and he flirted with me literally in every sentence, which was already pretty unattractive. But when we finally went out, he didn't flirt with me the whole time, didn't ask me questions, and only talked about himself. I never spoke to him again after that. When he has fake laughter for everything. I didn't notice it at first, but once I realized it, there was no way to ignore it. I dated a guy who was kind, attentive, and quite attractive, but every time someone said something, he let out a completely exaggerated laugh. It wasn't a natural laugh. It was a fake laugh, like a recording, like a TV host from the 90s. Even when I said something without a joke, he would laugh. I started getting secondhand embarrassment. It was like he was living acting like he didn't know how to have a normal reaction. It seemed like a silly detail, but it affected how I perceived him. I was dating an incredibly handsome man. I noticed he needed to floss and thought, okay, he probably forgot, he was busy, etc. After a while of dating, he never fixed it. He didn't have bad breath, just visible dirt between his teeth. I finally told him, "Hey, do you need to floss?" And he said, "Okay." A few weeks later we were cuddling and I started playing with his hair, scratching his scalp, stroking his hair, etc. It was super greasy and very oily, and it was also flaking a lot. My hands were so dirty that I thought he must have put a lot of gel on. We ended up in the shower later and this guy went in, washed his body quickly, and came out. You're military, so I thought, okay, maybe it's just a military shower. He was getting dressed and I asked him, "Honey, what kind of gel do you use?" He leaned over, kissed me, and told me he never used gel. I got dressed and left. This man had very little hygiene responsibility apart from a job he was taking a break from. How the hell do you not wash your hair or floss? That situation made me lose all interest. He tells me, "But you're perfect like this," when I say I go to the gym every day. First, because he assumes the only reason I go is to look better, when in reality what I want is to be stronger and more resilient. Second, because he assumes I don't like my body and that his opinion has value, as if he were the one who decided how I should look. If I really went to the gym to lose weight, he would have no right to tell me I shouldn't lose what I want to lose. Microaggressive behaviors. I don't mean exaggerated behaviors that seek to intimidate. They're small things like road rage, postures to make a point clear, short and moody responses. There are many more examples. They do it with coworkers, with customer service, with strangers, and we recognize it regardless of who it is, whether it was directed at a man or a woman, a friend or a stranger, and we take it into account. I've met attractive and interesting guys, but they did nothing but talk about their hobbies and passions. That's fine. I love when people get enthusiastic about their interests and careers. But then they never bothered to ask about me, not even when I tried to talk about things I identified with. After a while I felt like a cardboard figure. They had no interest in getting to know me. I was just a body they could talk to. This applies to both genders. Lying, cowardly men. A specific breed that lies for attention and can be incredibly manipulative and charismatic. The most dangerous deciding factor in my humble opinion. The ones I've known so far ended up trying to sabotage a colleague's work or pretending to be women to get attention online, and they stink. I used to play along, but now as soon as I encounter one of these, I leave as soon as I can. They're not only unattractive, but they're totally dangerous to humanity, putting others down. I dated a guy who constantly put me down. He made little comments that made me feel terrible or inferior to him, especially in his favorite hobby, video games. Many times I beat him or was better than him at different games, and he always talked about the ones he dominated while putting down the ones I dominated. He tried to get me to quit several board games after losing, thinking they were useless, and refused to admit it after I won them. He was the typical nerd who wanted to play with a girl, but didn't believe girls could play as well as boys. A complete idiot. Hair sticking out of ears or nose. I know it's natural, that there are people who can't help it, etc., and I don't intend to shame them or anything, but there's something about hair in ears or nose that bothers me. I can live with hair in armpits, feet, or whatever, but I don't see myself dating someone with hair in their ears or nose. I dated a guy once in college who lived with his parents. It wasn't a big deal, but he complained, for example, that his parents wouldn't let him have a dog, and then when we had plans to go to a music festival, I had to buy him the ticket. His lack of independence discouraged me tremendously instantly. I wasn't attracted to him anymore. I dated a guy who wouldn't give me space. If I didn't want to go out one night or didn't want to sleep over, he would text me asking what I was really doing and saying I was acting strange. I couldn't stand the insecurity. Again, it discouraged me instantly. Being compliant. The type of man who changes his opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs to please the person or people he wants. He retracts, doesn't keep his word, doesn't defend himself or others. He usually shows insecure, evasive, passive and passive-aggressive behaviors when conflict arises. He's cowardly. Like a little chameleon, he changes his attitude to adapt to the environment he's in to win the favor of others. Either he's unconscious or he resigns himself to the fact that the only people who will really like him because of these behaviors are those who seek to manipulate him for their own benefit. It's impossible to know how he really feels or thinks, because he doesn't have the courage to express himself. This type of weak personality is possibly the most unattractive trait I can think of. Jealousy. My husband wasn't like that. However, in my first serious relationship after his death, the guy was. It was so strange and unexpected. The first few times he said something about how long I had been at the store or who I had gone out with, I really thought he was joking. When I realized he wasn't, I told him, "Do whatever you have to do to never say stupid things like that again, or it's over." I think the jealousy persisted, but he was smart enough to hold it back. I can see some jealousy in normal situations, but jealousy isn't adorable. It's insulting and degrading. Too much negative energy spent worrying about what your partner does. That's no way to live. How disgusting, and no thanks. I once dated a guy who at first seemed interesting to me because he was sensitive. He talked about his emotions, his disappointments, how he had been mistreated in the past. I thought, how weird to find someone who talked like that, so open. But as the weeks went by, I understood it was victimization. Every story ended with how others were the bad guys, how he always gave more and nobody valued him. There was never an, I also made mistakes. Everything was they did this to me, they did that to me. And he disguised it well as if it were emotional maturity. It was emotional dependence wrapped in sensitive discourse. I ended up distancing myself. What's attractive isn't telling your wounds, it's what you do with them. And he clearly only used them to be told. Poor thing. That was completely discouraging for me. The most physically unpleasant thing suddenly is when they have a mustache that covers their upper lip. Even worse when it curls at the corners. Facial hair is fine. I understand a full beard. But for some reason this bothers me tremendously. And a non-physical trait that instantly discourages me. Harshly criticizing his ex or calling her crazy. If I have a reason to give them a chance, I like to see if they attribute these characteristics to all their exes. Usually criticizing their ex tells me they lack the maturity to see the role they played in the breakup of the relationship. Lack of ambition. It doesn't even have to be about work and money, since that's already established. I simply feel that lack of ambition to apply for all kinds of things will manifest in daily activities, which will eventually accumulate and drive me crazy. Not wanting to be better or do better at anything is a problem. Even if it's as simple as double knotting the garbage bag to prevent it from spilling. Over time, those little things become constant arguments that aren't worth it. When they spend most of a conversation talking about themselves, and when you think it's finally your turn to talk, they manage to refocus the conversation on themselves. Many years ago, a friend told me she had a test for guys on their first dates to determine if she would consider the idea of a second date. She told me that at some point during the date, the guy had to ask her at least one question. She also told me that the following counted as questions. Genuinely how she was, if she had liked the food, and returning some questions she asked. She proceeded to tell me that a solid 75% of men didn't pass this test. Lack of awareness. This can mean many things and seem like selfishness in certain aspects, but it's like if you're with me and you prepare something to eat. Why doesn't it occur to you to ask me if I want something? If we're at the mall, don't leave and go to a store you like without saying, "Hey, let's go over here," so I turn around and you're walking in a different direction. If we have a reservation at a restaurant at a certain time, don't keep me waiting for you to get ready when you had hours to do what you had to do. And then ask me if I mind if you smoke a cigarette outside the restaurant when we're already late. If I introduce you to my friends and we all go out together, don't leave and do your own thing. Suddenly I get social saturation. But at least let me know so my friends don't look at you weird. This is a bit more specific, but every time I discover that a single man is a bad father or is absent, I get discouraged immediately. Although there's a middle ground, an irresponsible father disgusts me, but with a man too involved in his children's lives, I'm talking about teenagers and adults, I can't. Some have trouble carrying on a relationship with a girl and being a full-time father at the same time. I'm also not going to force two families to unite for my own convenience. It's difficult because one extreme is a sign of a bad guy in general, but the other extreme can be synonymous with a bad boyfriend. When I date guys with kids, which after 30 is like all guys, I look for guys with kids over 15 years old. I'm realistic and I'm not one of those who bothers anyone's family with my unwanted presence, nor do I fool myself thinking I'm going to be a priority when I'm not. I simply avoid the mess I'm talking about. When my ex and I were together, my mental state was horrible. He knew it and I tried to maintain the relationship as best I could. But every time I started to open up because he asked me to, the only response he had was go to the gym. I explained to him that when I opened up, I didn't want advice or to be told what I should or shouldn't do. I just wanted someone to listen to me. But he insisted with don't do this, don't do that. That was really horrible. Tacitly admitting they don't consider women as fully equal people to other men. They never say it openly, of course, but it's the little details. Refusing to leave a woman alone unless she says she has a boyfriend is a good example. You're simply saying you don't care what she wants, but you'll respect another man's territory. Another example is talking about how empathetic or even feminist having a daughter has made them. So having a mother, a sister, friends, and a wife or girlfriend wasn't enough. What have you been thinking all this time? How terrifying. Having to prove he's the smartest at everything. There's nothing that turns me off faster than a man who in every conversation has to correct you or tell you how you should have said something better. It's happened to me several times. You're talking calmly about something you like and suddenly he interrupts you to explain your own point, even when he has no idea. It happened to me with a guy who was physically incredible until he started correcting me about a series he had never seen. He said it as if it bothered him that I knew something, as if he had to regain ground. That kind of need to be above, to demonstrate intellectual superiority every 5 minutes, automatically makes him unattractive because there's no enjoyment, no listening, no real connection. And no matter how handsome he is, if every chat feels like a debate where he wants to win, there's no way it can work. Staring at other women in front of him. There's a difference between casually observing someone's attributes, something most people can't avoid, and staring at them fixedly or actively. If you're referring to the second, I completely agree. But if you're referring to the first, I'm sorry to say that people can't help but notice it briefly before the brain gets distracted. Being destructive, particularly when there are other guys or other people around. Breaking things on purpose, hitting things that shouldn't be hit like walls or windows, or destroying others' art or property doesn't make you cool or strong. It makes you a wasteful fool I'll never invite into my life again. Wearing clothes that don't match. Men say they don't understand fashion, but doing a little research doesn't cost much. Look at some inspiration boards about what colors go well together, and what patterns don't. At least it shows you've made an effort to look good. It's very disappointing when we want to go out with you but we feel overdressed even in the most basic clothes because it looks like you chose them blindfolded. A man who can't admit he was wrong, who gets defensive at any joke, or who needs to act serious all the time loses points in seconds. It happened to me with someone I really liked physically until one day he tripped coming out of the restaurant. I laughed and told him, "You looked adorable." He got upset, told me it wasn't funny, that I was making fun of him, and from then on everything changed. Every time something went wrong, he justified himself, blamed others, or shut down. No light laughter. Everything was serious, and that for me is exhausting because part of the real attraction is being able to be relaxed, knowing you don't have to seem perfect, that you can laugh at your mistakes, that you're not constantly image building. A man who can't do that ends up seeming insecure. Asking very personal or intimate questions when you don't even really know me. Some guys get too close with their questions too quickly, and they always make me feel terribly uncomfortable. I get into trivial conversations I don't even want to have, usually at work, just for the guy to start asking me invasive questions about my intimate history or dating. I mean, buddy, we've said 2 sentences, 2 more than I wanted, and I haven't given any sign that I'm interested in anything. Why would you force me into this conversation? Aren't you embarrassed? How is it that this has happened to me so many times in my life? I understand that if you never expose yourself, you'll never get a date, but maybe you could have more than half a conversation with me before asking me about my dating preferences and if I'm willing to cheat on my boyfriend. This behavior guarantees I'll do everything possible to avoid you forever. Not only do you not attract me, but now I feel completely uncomfortable being around you. Blatant cowardice. I mean, if you changed your mind and you're no longer interested in me, tell me and go away instead of acting like an idiot who can't decide if he wants to run away or flirt with me, and then make up an elaborate lie to humiliate me in public with a fake girlfriend included. The cherry on top. Months after that humiliation, the idiot in question showed up at my work supposedly by pure coincidence. He simply forgot to act surprised to see me there, as he should have been if he really wasn't following me. Men are practical in this sense, not in a positive way, but the way they are predominantly raised, feelings, specifically their own, don't mean anything. That's why it's so important for modern men to learn to share their feelings and be sensitive. The idea that someone listens to their feelings is alien to them. We've never shared unless we're looking for a solution, an answer.